Earlier this year, a military assault boat quietly docked in the Maldives. For a tiny island nation best known for overwater bungalows and with no obvious enemies, the arrival of the Turkish vessel Vulcan struck some observers as strange. It felt out of place.
Definitely unusual for the Maldives.
But this wasn't a one-off. It followed a recent deal for Turkish combat drones. And if you start to connect the dots, a much larger, more deliberate picture emerges.
Right. It's not just isolated incidents.
Exactly. A brand new Turkish-built warship is delivered to Pakistan. Turkish drones are sold to Kenya. A massive Turkish military base, its largest outside the country, is operating in Somalia.
That Somali base is key, isn't it?
Absolutely. Piece by piece, from the coast of Africa to the shores of South Asia, Turkey had been quietly assembling a military and industrial footprint across the entire Indian Ocean.
A significant expansion, no doubt.
And for one regional superpower, India, this silent expansion isn't just a curiosity. It's a direct challenge unfolding in its own backyard, sparking a new kind of rivalry fought not just with warships, but with social media boycotts and canceled billion-dollar deals.
So it's escalating beyond just military posturing.
Very much so. This isn't just about ships and drones. It's about the start of a cold war on the warm waters of the Indian Ocean. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into a fascinating, unfolding geopolitical story. The quiet but deliberate expansion of Turkey's military and industrial reach across the Indian Ocean, and how this strategic move is sparking, well, a new kind of rivalry with India.
Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic. We'll unpack Turkey's ambitious New Asia strategy and try to reveal how its booming defense industry is becoming this really potent tool for its foreign policy.
And then we'll look at the other side too, India's response.
Exactly. Then we'll pivot to India's intricate efforts to counterbalance this rising influence, through forging new and often surprising alliances. It's a complex tapestry, really, of ambition, technology, and strategic maneuvering that's quietly reshaping the maritime landscape you might think you know.
I was looking at the recent tensions between India and Pakistan and the broader geopolitical chessboard, and it all felt so abstract. Sanctions, alliances, military hardware. But what does it feel like for the people on the ground? I tried to imagine the human stories behind these headlines.
That's a great way to think about it. Puts a human face on it.
I tried to picture a young engineer in Ankara. Let's call him Kenan. He works for Baykar, the company that builds the famous TB2 drones. For him, this isn't about geopolitics. It's about innovation and national pride.
The technological achievement.
He spends his days refining the targeting software or improving the composite materials of the drone's wings. When he sees news reports about his country's technology being used by allies like Pakistan, he doesn't just see a military contract.
No, it's more personal.
He sees his late nights in the lab, the collaborative spirit with his colleagues, and the validation of Turkish ingenuity on a world stage. He feels he is contributing to his nation's rise, crafting the very tools that allow Turkey to project its influence and forge its own path.
A real sense of contribution there.
It's a source of immense personal and professional satisfaction. While for the world, it's about a shifting military balance. For someone like Kenan, it's about building a future he can be proud of. One component, one line of code at a time.
That's a great way to frame it. You're right. This isn't just about abstract strategic moves. It's deeply rooted in, national ambition and pride. What we're seeing is Turkey embarking on what it calls its New Asia vision.
Right, the New Asia vision.
Yeah.
Launched back in 2019, wasn't it?
That's the one. It's a comprehensive strategy aiming for an effective military, diplomatic, and crucially commercial presence far beyond its traditional spheres of influence.
So moving beyond just Central Asia or, say, its long-standing ties with Pakistan.
Precisely. Reaching into new territories across Southeast Asia and, significantly for our discussion, the Indian Ocean.
So what really prompted this significant shift eastward? Why New Asia now? And why this focus on expansion? What was the context?
Well, this vision emerged at a time when Turkey's relations with its traditional Western allies, like the U.S. and various European countries, were often, let's say, strained.
Okay, so looking for new friends, perhaps.
In a way, yes. Ankara was actively seeking to diversify its alliances, exploring new partners outside its traditional NATO relationships. You could even see parallels with its efforts towards reconciliation with Russia around that time.
Interesting, but it wasn't purely political. You mentioned economics.
No, definitely not just politics. There was a significant economic driver. Turkey aimed to address its trade imbalance, particularly with economic giants like China and India.
Right, trying to boost exports and commercial influence.
Exactly, seeking to strengthen its commercial clout and create new opportunities for Turkish businesses across Asia. But maybe the most striking aspect of this new Asia strategy is its military dimension.
Ah, the ships and drones we started with.
Right. It's heavily driven through arms deals and increased naval activities with a distinct focus on the Horn of Africa.
Why the Horn specifically?
Ankara seems to view it as a crucial gateway, a strategic entry point to Asia and the broader Indian Ocean. Control or influence there gives you leverage.
So if that's the strategic blueprint, the why and the what, where exactly are we seeing this new Asia vision manifest on the ground? Or, well, maybe more accurately, on the water? What are the key hubs?
We see it in several key locations, each serving as a sort of strategic pillar for Ankara's expanded influence. Let's start with Somalia. That's arguably the most significant hub right now.
Somalia. Why Somalia?
Well, Turkey's largest overseas military base, named Tuksum, has been operating in Mogadishu since 2017.
Turksum, right. And what's his main purpose there?
Its primary role is to train Somali soldiers. This deepens the bilateral relationship immensely and, crucially, provides Ankara with a direct physical foothold in the Indian Ocean region. It's boots on the ground.
And what about the economic agreements there? I heard something about significant resource deals playing a part too.
Absolutely. Economics and defense are tightly linked here. In February 2024, a major defense and economic cooperation deal was signed.
What did that entail?
Turkey committed to reconstructing, equipping, and training the Somali Navy, which, is currently quite limited.
Okay, so capacity building.
Yeah.
And what does Turkey get in return?
A substantial share of the revenue from Somalia's exclusive economic zone, the EEZ. That's the area of sea where Somalia has special rights over marine resources. Reports suggest Turkey gets 30% of that revenue.
30%? That's quite a lot. How does Somalia see that?
Well, Somalia apparently sees this as a justifiable cost. They estimate they lose around $500 million annually to illegal fishing in their waters. So Turkish naval help, even at that price, might seem like a good deal.
I see. And then there was an oil and gas deal too.
Yes, following that defense pact, in March 2024, a major oil and gas cooperation agreement was reached. This grants a Turkish state company, TPAO, the right to explore Somalia's largely untapped oil and gas reserves.
Untapped? How much are we talking?
Estimates around 30 billion barrels, so huge potential. Reports suggest Turkey could claim a very large percentage, maybe even 90%, of annual production initially to recover costs before profits are shared, highlighting the long-term economic play.
Wow. And I read something even more ambitious. Missile testing.
That's right. There are apparently ongoing discussions about establishing a ballistic missile and space missile test site in Somalia.
Why Somalia for that?
Its location near the equator is actually very favorable for launches. It offers certain efficiencies. If that happens, it would be a truly significant step, boosting Turkey's missile capabilities and its space ambitions.
Wow, that's a big footprint just in Somalia. Huge implications.
Yeah.
Where else are we seeing these moves, these strategic pillars?
Okay, moving eastwards across the ocean, let's look at the Maldives, that tiny island nation we started with.
Right, the overwater bungalows place.
Exactly. It's recently seen a notable increase in Turkish military presence. In March 2024, the Maldives signed a contract for 6 Turkish drones.
Drones again. What for? Surveillance.
Specifically for EV surveillance, yes, protecting their maritime resources. But the timing was interesting.
Oh, so?
Well, it came during a period of heightened tensions between the Maldives and India. So acquiring drones from Turkey, a country increasingly seen as a rival to India in the region, was pointed.
A deliberate signal, perhaps.
It certainly looks that way. And this drone deal was followed by the delivery of a Turkish warship, the Kinaliyata, and remember that earlier deployment of the Vulcan assault boat.
Right. Which, as we said, is strange for a country with no real enemies.
Precisely. It signals a clear shift in its traditional defense posture and alignments, moving closer to Turkey.
Okay, so Somalia, Maldives. What about mainland Africa?
Turkish military industrial products are also reaching further into Africa. Kenya, for instance.
Kenya. What's happening there?
Last summer, Turkey's defense industry secured an agreement to export Bayraktar drones, those famous TB2s again, and provide training for Kenyan military officers.
So the drone exports are really a key part of this strategy.
Absolutely. And these drones aren't just sitting in hangars. They're already operational in neighboring countries like Ethiopia, Djibouti, and Sudan. They've been deployed in counterterrorism operations against groups like Al-Shabaab in Somalia.
So they're demonstrating their effectiveness, which probably helps sales.
Exactly. Combat-proven technology is always more attractive. It shows the regional reach and capability of Turkish defense tech.
And what about closer to India, in South Asia itself? Pakistan, Bangladesh.
Big inroads there, too. Ankara has become the second largest arms supplier to both Pakistan and Bangladesh, trailing only China.
Second largest. That's significant.
Very. And the naval collaboration with Pakistan is particularly deep. It was formalized in 2018 with the Miljam Corvette project.
Ah, yes, the co-production deal you mentioned earlier.
That's the one. It involves building 4 advanced corvettes. 2 are built in Turkey, but crucially, 2 are being built in Karachi, Pakistan. This includes substantial technology transfer agreements, which is very valuable for Pakistan's domestic industry.
So building capacity for Pakistan, too. Are these ships operational?
2 of them, the Babur and Badur, are already in service. The other 2 are expected by the end of 2025. And during a recent India-Pakistan standoff, things got quite direct.
How so?
There were reports of direct Turkish support to Pakistan. A Turkish C-130 military transport plane landed in Karachi, and an Ada-class frigate, one of those Miljam types, docked there too. Very visible support.
Highlighting the depth of that defense relationship. What about elsewhere in South Asia?
Sri Lanka is another point of interest. Turkey has been involved in modernizing its navy since 2021.
And Sri Lanka's location is key, right? South of India.
Exactly. Strategically located, and it also maintains close ties with China, adding another layer to the geopolitical puzzle for India.
And further east, Southeast Asia.
Yes, the outreach extends there too. Turkish ships have recently visited ports in Malaysia, Port Klang, and Jakarta in Indonesia. Ankara also announced a frigate R&D agreement with an Indonesian military-industrial firm.
So strengthening ties with major Asian nations seeking maybe more strategic independence, not aligning strictly with the U.S. or China.
That seems to be the pattern, engaging with countries looking to diversify their partnerships.
So with all these moves, Somalia, Maldives, Kenya, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia, it's clear Turkey is really making a splash in the Indian Ocean, a significant presence.
Undeniably.
But what does this mean for India, which, as we know, has historically viewed this entire region as, well, its own backyard, its sphere of influence?
It poses a direct and multifaceted challenge for India. It goes beyond just traditional military concerns now. We're seeing it involve narrative warfare, diplomatic influence. It's complex.
How is it a direct challenge? Can you unpack that?
Well, from India's perspective, this growing strategic and ideological convergence between Turkey and Pakistan is a major geopolitical development. It has potentially far-reaching implications for South Asia.
You mentioned the standoff earlier. How did Turkey's stance play out then?
During that recent military standoff between India and Pakistan, Turkey didn't just stay neutral. It openly supported Pakistan and framed the crisis as Indian aggression.
That's a strong position to take. How did that compare to other regional powers?
It contrasted sharply, actually. Gulf powers like the UAE and Saudi Arabia, who have deepening economic ties with India, took more neutral stances. Turkey really emerged as the only major Muslim-majority country to be openly critical of India in that instance.
That's a strong diplomatic stance, as you said. Does Turkey's support for Pakistan extend to other sensitive areas, like the Kashmir issue?
It absolutely does. Turkey's consistent articulation of the Kashmiri cause, often aligning with Pakistan's narrative, gives Islamabad international legitimacy on the issue.
How does that undermine India?
It directly undermines India's long-standing message that Kashmir is strictly an internal matter. You have President Erdogan referencing Kashmir at the UN General Assembly, Turkey hosting Pakistan-aligned human rights conferences. It institutionalizes an anti-India stance on the issue.
Which must be a serious concern for New Delhi's strategic communication efforts.
Definitely. And Ankara is also positioning itself ideologically as a leader of Muslim solidarity against perceived injustices, including those allegedly perpetrated by India in Kashmir and elsewhere.
So it's creating a kind of ideological bloc.
That's how India seems to view it, yes. An emerging form of ideological bloc politics that it views with growing concern. And this isn't just diplomatic talk. Both Ankara and Islamabad invest heavily in state-backed media and coordinated digital narratives.
You mean like social media campaigns?
Exactly. Social media campaigns like the hashtag boycott Turkey ones we saw emerge from India, but also efforts by Turkey and Pakistan to internationalize issues India considers purely internal. This information warfare is a different, perhaps newer kind of threat for India to manage.
And what about the fallout? Has India responded directly to this perceived challenge from Turkey? Have there been tangible consequences?
Oh, yes. Following the India-Pakistan conflict, where Turkey took sides, India saw a significant backlash against Turkey within the country.
What form did that take?
Several things. India banned the X account, formerly Twitter, of the Turkish state broadcaster TRT World. It suspended an agreement with a Turkish aviation services company, Celebi, which operated in 9 Indian airports.
So hitting them economically and in terms of information flow.
Right. And even academically, Indian universities suspended cooperation agreements they had with Turkish universities.
Wow, a broad response. Did it filter down to the public?
It did. On the public and commercial front, Indian citizens initiated a pretty widespread boycott movement against Turkish products. Major consumer product distributor associations, like the AICDEA, which supplies millions of stores, announced an indefinite boycott of Turkish imports valued around $250 million annually.
That's a significant economic hit. Any specific brands targeted?
Yes. E-commerce platforms like Flipkart announced boycotts of major Turkish brands such as LC Waikiki, Mavi, and Trendyol. You even saw pro-military Indian protesters holding banners calling for boycotts not just of Pakistan and China, but specifically adding Turkey to that list. It really showed the public sentiment.
And on the defense side, any repercussions there?
Definitely. India had previously, even before this latest flare-up, canceled a massive $2 billion shipbuilding contract with a Turkish shipyard, Anadolu shipyard.
$2 billion. Why was that canceled?
Officially, the reason given was India's policy of strengthening its domestic shipbuilding industry, the Make in India drive. But unofficially, it was widely seen as being due to dissatisfaction with Turkey's increasingly close defense ties with Pakistan.
And how did Turkey react to that cancellation and the boycotts?
In response, Turkey decided to stop all military exports to India, which further strained the already cooling relations.
So looking ahead, what are the broader strategic implications for India, this dual presence of China and Turkey?
That's a key point. The growing dual presence of China and Turkey in the Indian Ocean region could pose really complex challenges for India. Both nations might collaborate, perhaps tacitly or overtly, to undercut Indian interests.
How might Turkey do that?
Well, Turkey could potentially replicate China's strategy of building strong relationships with India's immediate neighbors like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Maldives, thereby limiting India's regional policy space, sort of boxing it in.
And Turkey, being a NATO ally, complicates things for India's partners, like the U.S.
Exactly. It's complicated by the fact that Turkey is a NATO ally. This might restrict the U.S. in supporting India against Turkish influence in the same way it might more readily support India against China, which is seen as a clear strategic competitor. It's a more awkward diplomatic situation.
And one more layer, BRICS?
Yes. Turkey has formally applied for BRICS membership. It's anticipated that Russia and China would likely support its application.
How would BRICS membership help Turkey here?
It could allow Turkey to further balance its position as a NATO member, giving it another influential platform outside the Western orbit. And potentially, it could even influence Russia's traditional support for India's position and interests within the Indian Ocean region. It just adds another layer of geopolitical complexity for India to navigate. And, it's important to remember that this level of ambition, especially naval ambition, isn't entirely new for Turkey. It has historical roots that really help us understand the current naval transformation.
Oh, really? Go back further for us. What was the Turkish Navy like historically?
Well, right after World War I, the Navy of the nascent Turkish Republic was, frankly, exceptionally weak. It was primarily focused on basic coastal defense, nothing more ambitious.
And that had consequences.
It did. This historical weakness is often cited as a key reason why Turkey couldn't regain control of many Aegean islands from Greece after its War of Independence, despite winning on land. They simply lacked the naval power.
Okay, so when did this shift from just coastal defense to a more expansive naval vision really begin?
The first major shift came after Turkey joined NATO in the 1950s. Initially, Ankara relied heavily on the alliance for naval balance, especially thinking about its relationship with Greece.
But something changed.
Yes. Escalating tensions over Cyprus in the 1960s, and importantly, a perception in Ankara that the U.S. wasn't being fully supportive of Turkish interests there, prompted a significant strategic rethink.
What did they do?
This led to a national initiative, sometimes summarized by the phrase, national build what others can't give. It was a clear signal. Turkey intended to develop its own independent defense capabilities, particularly naval ones.
So less reliance on allies.
Precisely. This initiative saw the procurement of more advanced warships and a new focus on power projection, especially in the Mediterranean. The results were dramatic.
How so?
Between 1963 and 1973, Turkey's naval capabilities surged. They went from having virtually no amphibious landing craft or assault boats to having over 50 landing craft and more than 10 assault boats.
And that buildup had a direct impact.
Absolutely. It directly facilitated the 1974 military operation in northern Cyprus. They had the tools to project power across the water.
Okay, so that was the Cyprus-driven shift. What came next, after the Cold War?
After the Cold War ended, Turkey launched its open seas strategy in 1997. The name itself tells you the ambition. Transform the Navy from a purely coastal defense force into a true blue water Navy capable of operating far from its own shores.
And then came the current government and the MILGEM program.
Right. In 2002, the ruling Justice and Development Party, the AKP, initiated the MILGEM program. This was a major undertaking, a multi-billion-dollar national warship program specifically designed to expand Turkey's deep-sea naval capabilities.
And that's when the Indian Ocean focus became explicit.
It became much more explicit around then. In 2011, then Prime Minister Erdogan openly declared that Turkey's national interests extended all the way to the Indian Ocean via the Suez Canal. That marked a really significant public expansion of Turkey's stated maritime vision.
And we're seeing the concrete results of that long-term vision now, aren't we? The fleet growth.
Precisely. The results are tangible and quite striking. Between 2007 and 2023, the number of domestically built ships in the Turkish fleet more than doubled, from 11 to 54.
Domestically built, that's key for their self-reliance goal.
Absolutely. And to test and refine these growing capabilities, they established the Turkey Maritime Task Group, or TMTG. This group conducts regular long-range naval deployments.
Where have they deployed?
All over, really. Notable missions included their first one out of the Med in 2010, visiting 9 countries. In 2011, a 70-day mission through the Red Sea, Gulf of Aden, Indian Ocean, and Arabian Sea. And in 2014, a major Africa mission, sailing all the way around the continent via the Cape of Good Hope.
So, showing the flag far and wide. When did the Indian Ocean become a regular destination?
The Turkish Navy first entered the Indian Ocean operationally in 2009, participating in exercises in the Gulf of Aden and Arabian Sea, and joining anti-piracy operations off Somalia. But since then, this interest in the region has only intensified.
Why the focus there?
It seems to be about securing vital trade routes to Asia, which are crucial for Turkey's economy, and also about strengthening ties with non-NATO allies, particularly Pakistan. And as we've seen, Turkish vessels have recently made port calls at strategically important locations right across the Indian Ocean. Karachi, Colombo, Male, Port Klang, Jakarta, solidifying their growing presence and influence.
Then I got a small report online about Turkish port operations in Somalia, and it made me think about the ripple effects. I imagine a man named Faisal, a shipping agent who has worked at the port of Mogadishu for over 30 years.
Someone who's seen the changes firsthand.
He remembers when the Indian dhows were the lifeblood of trade, their captains carrying generations of shared history across the ocean. The relationship was old, familiar, comfortable.
A different era of trade.
But recently, things have changed. New, modern Turkish container ships now dominate the docks, managed by a Turkish company. Turkish military trainers are visible in the city, and a gleaming new Turkish-built hospital stands where there was once rubble.
Tangible signs of Turkish investment?
Faisal's daughter is even learning Turkish, hoping for a scholarship. He feels a genuine gratitude for the investment and security Turkey has brought, yet he also feels a quiet sense of unease.
How so? Unease about what?
The old ties with Indian traders feel more distant, their presence diminished. He's watching the tide of influence change right before his eyes, bringing both opportunity and a subtle feeling of loss for the familiar ways of the past. It's a complex feeling that a simple news headline about Turkey's naval footprint could never capture.
Faisal's story, even imagined, perfectly illustrates how Turkey's expanding military and industrial footprint is deeply intertwined with its economic diplomacy and strategic power projection. It's not just about selling weapons, you see.
No, it's about embedding themselves in the economy, the society.
Exactly. It's about building long-term relationships and influence that change the very fabric of local economies and societies, just like Faisal experienced. And this is especially evident when you look at Turkey's booming indigenous defense industry.
Right, particularly the advanced drone technology and naval vessel production we've touched on.
And central to Turkey's whole maritime strategy is this concept, this doctrine called Blue Homeland.
Mavi Vatan. I've heard that term. What exactly is it?
It was coined back in 2006 by a retired admiral, Sem Grudenis. But it's become much more than just a naval strategy. It's a grand vision, really, to secure Turkey's maritime periphery and project power far beyond its immediate shores.
So it's a core policy now.
Absolutely. It's become a cornerstone of Turkish foreign and security policy. It enjoys broad popular appeal across the political spectrum, which is important, and it acts as a kind of coercive diplomatic tool in key areas.
Like where?
The Eastern Mediterranean, definitely. The Black Sea. And even pushing as far as the Horn of Africa now. Turkey's successes in securing those maritime agreements we discussed with Libya and Somalia, those are direct manifestations of the Mavi Vatan Doctrine in action.
And this doctrine relies heavily on their own weapons.
Very much so. Turkey's activist foreign policy and its forward defense strategy heavily rely on domestically produced arms. The media often focuses on the prowess of Turkish unmanned combat aerial vehicles, the UCAVs, or their plans for domestic fighter jets like Hurjet and K-An.
But the naval side is just as important.
Just as important, maybe even more foundational to Mavi Vatan. Significant developments are happening in the naval sector, driven by some really ambitious flagship projects.
So what are these flagship naval projects that are at the core of this strategy? What kind of ships are we talking about that signal this profound new direction for the Turkish Navy? They're investing a lot, right?
Indeed, Turkey is investing massively. Reports suggest over $8 billion into building 31 new warships. It marks a record pace in its naval construction program. These projects are a clear indicator of a profound new direction, moving towards greater, true blue water capabilities.
Okay, break down the big ones for us. What's at the top?
At the very top of this ambition is the MUGM aircraft carrier project.
An aircraft carrier.
Yes, a full-fledged national aircraft carrier. It's Turkey's most ambitious naval project ever, with a planned displacement of around 60,000 tons.
How big is that compared to what they have?
It's almost 3 times the size of the TCG Anadolu, which is Turkey's first LHD landing helicopter dock that currently operates more like a drone carrier.
And aircraft carriers are a statement.
Absolutely. They're emblematic symbols of great power status and key tools for naval diplomacy, power projection, deterrence, coercion far from home. The MUGM is expected to house advanced homegrown UCAVs, showcasing Turkey's growing expertise in fifth-generation warfare concepts. If they complete it, Turkey would join a very exclusive club of nations operating carriers of that size.
Okay, that's the carrier. What else is key?
Then there's the TF-2000 Air Defense Warfare Destroyer, AEW destroyer.
What's its role?
This project aims to provide long-range air defense coverage against modern airborne threats, missiles, aircraft. It's planned to house an indigenous vertical launch system, the MIDI-LAS, capable of launching advanced missiles like the Seeper, which has a range over 150 kilometers.
So protecting the fleet, especially the carrier.
Exactly. This destroyer model is crucial for Turkey's forward defense doctrine and its larger steel dome concept, an AI-assisted layered air defense system. It would provide the vital air defense umbrella for a future Emil Red carrier strike group operating far from Turkish shores.
Got it. Carrier, destroyer. Or what about undersea?
Finally, we had the Milden submarine program.
Milden. When are these expected?
The first units are set to be delivered by 2030, so it's a longer-term project. It focuses on producing high-grade, air-independent propulsion submarines, or AIP submarines.
AIP, what's the advantage there?
AIP allows non-nuclear submarines to operate underwater for much longer periods without having to surface or snorkel for air. This significantly increases their stealth and endurance compared to conventional diesel-electric subs.
Making them more dangerous.
Very much so. These Milden submarines will be armed with advanced sensors for signals and electronic intelligence gathering, plus indigenous Turkish weapons like the Akaya heavyweight torpedo, the AT-MACA anti-ship missile, and potentially the GZN cruise missile.
So a serious A2AD capability. Anti-accessory denial.
Precisely. They will significantly enhance Turkey's A2AD strategy, basically, creating a highly dangerous zone for any adversary's ships or subs to enter. This creates a formidable deterrent, particularly in contested waters like the Mediterranean. And importantly, like MILGEM, this project also aims to localize domestic production and know-how, boosting self-reliance and reducing dependence on foreign designs or components.
It's impressive how much they're investing in all of this simultaneously, especially, as you noted, given some of Turkey's recent economic challenges. What's the broader economic and strategic thinking behind pouring billions into these massive naval projects right now?
You're right to point that out again. It's a key question. These huge naval investments are happening despite significant economic hardship in Turkey, with austerity measures supposedly in place to combat high inflation.
But the defense budget is protected.
It certainly appears insulated from those cuts. The central budget allocates vast sums, over $45 billion planned for 2025 overall defense spending, with a significant portion clearly directed toward these three major naval programs, MUGEM, TF-2000, and Milden, all being pushed forward at the same time. It clearly shows the government's priorities.
Why prioritize this so heavily now?
Well, Turkey's success with UCAVs, particularly the Bayraktar drones, has really propelled its entire defense industry onto the global stage, making it an export giant in that specific niche. These new naval projects represent an even more advanced stage.
A step up in complexity.
Definitely. They require highly sophisticated engineering design, systems integration, and advanced manufacturing know-how. Turkey now believes, seemingly, that this is within its grasp due to the maturation of its defense industrial base over the last decade or so.
And strategically, is it purely about projecting power outwards?
The justification given is often defensive. These investments are framed largely for defensive purposes, driven by what Turkey perceives as a highly militarized maritime vicinity. You have other NATO allies with powerful navies, Russia in the Black Sea, Israel in the Eastern Med.
So it's about holding their own in a tough neighborhood.
Partly, yes. Turkey aims to be able to exercise power and secure its interests across multiple maritime fronts, simultaneously the Black Sea, the Aegean, the Eastern Mediterranean. It's about safeguarding critical economic interests, like potential undersea gas reserves, and creating a unified security sphere around their blue homeland. It's deterrence and defense, but with tools that also enable significant power projection if needed.
How are these ambitious projects and their expanding capabilities impacting regional power dynamics? Let's start with the Black Sea.
The Black Sea is a really interesting case. Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine has, somewhat paradoxically, inadvertently enabled Turkey to become the dominant naval power there, largely due to the constraints on Russia's Black Sea fleet and Turkey's control over the straits via the Montreux Convention.
So these new Turkish naval units will solidify that dominance.
They will certainly bolster Turkey's capabilities in the Black Sea significantly. This impacts wider power dynamics, potentially affects freedom of navigation for others, and definitely influences NATO's deterrent strategy against Russian interests in the region. Turkey holds a very strong hand there now.
And shifting south back to the Horn of Africa, how does this naval buildup connect there?
As we discussed, Turkey and Somalia have significantly strengthened their naval cooperation. That July 2024 agreement is key.
Remind us what that allows.
It allows Turkey to train, equip, and modernize the Somali Navy, patrol Somalia's exclusive economic zone, remember the illegal fishing issue, and also explore its territorial waters for hydrocarbons. They've already sent the seismic survey vessel Orus Reis, supported by naval escorts.
So a direct link between the naval power and economic interests.
Absolutely. It builds on their already strong military ties, the Turks base in Mogadishu. And crucially, Turkey's armed forces have that 2-year parliamentary authorization for foreign deployment in Somalia, explicitly including naval activities. This isn't a short-term visit. It signals a sustained, long-term presence and commitment.
And this fits into their broader Africa strategy.
Yes, Ankara's heavy involvement in Somalia is really the sharp end of a much broader Turkish push into Africa, a strategy that began systematically back in 1998 with the first Africa Action Plan.
It goes back that far.
It does. By 2008, Turkey was formally recognized as an African Union strategic partner. They opened numerous embassies across the continent, a huge diplomatic expansion. When Turkey successfully bid for a non-permanent seat on the UN Security Council in 2009, a vast majority of African states, 51 out of 53, supported them. That shows the diplomatic groundwork paying off.
And security ties followed the diplomatic push.
Yes. By 2022, around 30 African states had signed security cooperation agreements with Turkey, and nearly 20 of those included specific provisions for Turkish military training of their troops. The Horn of Africa is particularly critical in this strategy.
Why the Horn above other regions?
Because of its vital geographic position astride major sea lanes, its potential resources, and its significant development potential. Plus, it's become a hotspot for increasing great power competition. China, the US, Gulf states, Russia, and now Turkey are all jostling for influence there.
It certainly sounds like Turkey is transitioning from being maybe a strong regional player to something much bigger on the world stage, particularly at sea. But what are the challenges? This can't all be smooth sailing, right?
No, definitely not. Turkey is indeed transitioning from being a medium-sized naval power to potentially a more competent global player with genuine blue water capabilities. But this transition is fraught with significant challenges that could really affect its sustainability and long-term impact.
Okay, what's challenge number one?
First, there's the sheer cost and the inherent risk of sparking an arms race. The massive financial and labor investment required for these projects, like the MUGM carrier, risks straining other branches of the defense economy. You could see competition for funding and skilled talent developing within the Turkish defense sector itself.
And the arms race aspect. With whom?
Well, this expansion inevitably risks adding fuel to existing rivalries, particularly with regional powers like Greece in the Aegean and Eastern Med, and potentially Israel too. But it could also create friction with global players like the US and the EU, depending on how Turkey wields this new power.
Even with Greece, despite both being NATO allies.
Especially with Greece. Their relationship remains incredibly complex, marked by deep-seated security concerns, conflicting maritime claims, and often escalatory rhetoric. This leads to what international relations scholars call a mixed-motive security dilemma.
Explain that.
It's a situation where each side's purely defensive actions, building up its navy, conducting exercises, are perceived by the other side as potentially offensive or threatening. This fuels an arms race, even if neither side actually intends to attack the other. It's a dangerous spiral.
So even allies can get caught in that kind of security dilemma. What other major challenges does Turkey face in this ambitious naval expansion?
Third, Turkey has a tricky balancing act to maintain between its increasingly activist, sometimes unilateral foreign policy and its existing security alignments, particularly its long-standing membership in NATO and relationship with the US.
How do they manage that?
We see attempts to harmonize, like joint naval exercises with the US Navy, which happened recently in the Eastern Mediterranean. But potential shifts in U.S. foreign policy, for example, if a future administration significantly reduces U.S. engagement in the Middle East or Eastern Med, could leave a vacuum.
A vacuum Turkey might try to fill.
Exactly. Which could further complicate regional dynamics in Turkey's relationship with its Western allies. Fourth, there's intense regional competition, especially in Africa.
Not just Turkey is interested in places like Somalia.
Far from it. The UAE, for instance, is a primary competitor and has historically seen the Horn of Africa as critical to its own strategic interests. The UAE has funded major port projects in Somaliland and Puntland Breakaway, or autonomous regions of Somalia, and supported various armed forces across the region.
And that Ethiopia-Somaliland deal complicates things further.
Tremendously. That agreement in January 2024, potentially exchanging Ethiopian recognition of Somaliland for sea access and a military base on Somaliland's coast, really shook up the region. It reportedly led to the UAE cutting some support to the Central Somali National Army, perhaps partly in reaction to Mogadishu's deepening ties with Turkey. This geopolitical balancing act just adds layers of volatility.
Okay, competition from rivals. What about challenges within Somalia itself?
That's the fifth point. Internal Somali challenges pose significant hurdles for the implementation of Turkey's agreements. Somalia still has a very complex and fractured political landscape. There are allegations against the current President Mohammed about consolidating power, a polarized parliament, and regions like Puntland periodically withdrawing cooperation from the federal government.
So the agreements might be hard to actually implement on the ground.
Precisely. And there's uncertainty about how Turkey's maritime security enforcement would extend to waters claimed by Somaliland, which Ankara officially recognizes as part of Somalia, but Mogadishu doesn't control, or how Turkish forces would interact with rival forces funded by the UAE, like the Puntland Maritime Police Force. It's messy.
And the threat from al-Shabaab hasn't gone away.
Not at all. That's the sixth challenge. The persistent threat from the al-Shabaab insurgency poses a significant challenge. Continued conflict, and especially any major battlefield setbacks for the Somali government forces that Turkey is training, could undermine the legitimacy and popular acceptance of Turkey's military presence. Future peace settlements, if they ever happen, might even demand the ejection of all foreign forces, including Turkey's, which al-Shabaab has consistently condemned.
One last challenge. You mentioned the Houthis.
Yes. Seventh, it's currently unclear how Ankara would react if Houthi militants in Yemen were to attack a ship transiting near Somali waters that was perceived as being under Turkish protection or associated with Turkish interests. Turkey has maintained a complex, somewhat balanced relationship with the Houthis amidst the ongoing Gaza war, and a direct confrontation could upset that delicate balance.
Finally, I heard a story from a contact who follows naval exercises. It wasn't about conflict, but about an unexpected partnership. Picture a young Indian naval officer, Lieutenant Anjali Sharma, aboard an Indian frigate during a joint exercise with the Hellenic Navy in the Eastern Mediterranean.
Okay, an Indian ship in the Med with the Greeks. Interesting.
She's thousands of miles from her home waters, the Indian Ocean. In the ship's mess hall, she talks with her Greek counterpart, Lieutenant Nikos Voulgaris. Nikos speaks about the constant tension in the Aegean, the daily cat-and-mouse games with Turkish jets and ships.
Ah, sharing experiences of a common challenger.
Exactly. Anjali shares similar stories about monitoring the Indian Ocean, the strategic choke points there, and dealing with assertive naval presences. They find an instant, surprising sense of camaraderie.
Beyond just the official alliance documents.
Right. They aren't just allies because their government signed a paper. They are fellow sailors who understand the same pressures, who face arguably a common strategic challenger in their respective seas, Turkey.
A shared operational reality.
For Anjali, this connection forged over coffee and shared sea stories makes the abstract concept of strategic counterbalancing feel real and personal. It's a friendship built not on shared history, perhaps, but on a shared present-day concern. When I hear stories like this, it reminds me that geopolitics is ultimately personal. These grand strategies are creating new human networks, weaving alliances of mutual understanding across the globe in response to the ambitions of rising powers.
Anjali and Nikos' shared experiences, even if illustrative, truly underscore the reality of strategic counterbalancing from India's perspective. India views this growing Turkey-Pakistan axis and Turkey's wider expansion with significant concern, and it's adopting a multidimensional approach to address it.
So it's not just about reacting, but actively counterbalancing.
Exactly. This involves not only bolstering its own hard power, but also engaging in sophisticated narrative diplomacy and, crucially, strengthening ties with Turkey's own regional rivals.
Which countries are we talking about?
India has explicitly upgraded its defense and intelligence sharing mechanisms with countries that have, shall we say, tense or complex relations with Ankara. Specifically, Greece, Cyprus, Armenia, and Israel.
Greece and Cyprus make sense given the Eastern Med tensions. Armenia, too, historical issues there. But Israel is particularly interesting.
It is. This outreach is a clear signal of India's willingness to balance Turkey's activism through targeted strategic partnerships.
Let's zoom in on that India-Israel defense partnership then. How extensive is it really, and what makes it so strategically significant for India's counter-strategy against Turkish influence?
Okay, the India-Israel defense relationship is arguably one of the most robust and strategically significant components of India's counter-strategy. It's deep and multi-layered.
When did it really take off?
Well, formal diplomatic ties were only established in 1992, but defense cooperation actually predates that by quite a bit. Israel reportedly provided covert military support to India during past conflicts, like the 1962 war with China and the wars with Pakistan in 65 and 71.
So a long, quiet history before the formal ties.
Exactly. And since 1992, the relationship has evolved into this deep, multidimensional engagement. It covers a huge range: massive arms trade, joint research and development, R&D, extensive intelligence sharing, counterterrorism cooperation, and collaboration on emerging defense technologies like cyber and AI.
Israel is a major arms supplier to India then.
One of the absolute top suppliers, yes, often second or third after Russia and sometimes France. Israel offers cutting-edge and, importantly, combat-tested technologies that are vital for India's national security.
Like what kind of systems?
Things like the Barak 1 and Barak 8 missile defense systems for Indian Navy ships. The Barak 8 was actually a joint development with India's DRDO, Falcon, AAWACS, those airborne warning and control systems mounted on Russian aircraft, widely used Israeli drones like the Heron and Searcher for surveillance along India's borders, Spike anti-tank guided missiles, advanced radar systems for missile tracking. The list is long.
And you mentioned shared challenges create synergy.
Right. Both nations face persistent security threats from hostile neighbors and complex terrorist networks. This creates a natural synergy in their security outlooks, dealing with asymmetric threats, cross-border terrorism, cyber warfare. They understand each other's problems.
Beyond just buying weapons, what about joint R&D? You mentioned the Barak 8.
Yes, joint R&D is a critical component. The Barak 8 surface-to-air missile system is the prime example, a successful collaboration between Israel Aerospace Industries, IAI, and India's Defense Research and Development Organization, DRDO. But they also collaborate on unmanned aerial systems, drones, electronic warfare technologies, even components for things like laser-based missile defense.
And this helps India's domestic goals.
Very much so. It directly supports India's Make in India initiative and its long-term goal of achieving greater strategic autonomy in defense production. It's not just buying off the shelf, it's about building capacity.
Okay, hardware and R&D. What about the less visible stuff? Intelligence sharing and counterterrorism. That seems like a really natural fit given both countries' experiences with terrorism.
It is, and it's a less publicized but highly strategic dimension of the partnership. Cooperation really intensified after the horrific 2008 Mumbai attacks.
How has India benefited?
India has benefited significantly from Israel's hard-earned expertise in areas like urban warfare, hostage rescue techniques, and counterinsurgency operations. Israeli security experts have trained Indian special forces and other units in techniques honed by Mossad and Shin Bet for anti-terror operations.
And technology plays a role here, too.
Absolutely. Israeli cyber intelligence and surveillance technology are reportedly integrated into India's internal security apparatus. This is especially useful for monitoring cross-border terrorism infiltration and insurgent networks in sensitive areas like Jammu and Kashmir or the northeastern states.
Cyber seems crucial everywhere now. Is the cooperation deep there?
Yes, collaboration has expanded significantly into critical areas like cyber threat detection, network security, and protecting critical infrastructure. Israeli firms offer advanced tools and joint ventures, often facilitated through funds like the India-Israel Industrial R&D and Technological Innovation Fund, I4F, foster partnerships in cutting-edge fields like AI, big data analysis, drone warfare, robotics, and network-centric operations.
What about space? And border security.
Cooperation includes satellite surveillance technology and missile tracking systems. Israel provides key support, particularly radar and tracking technologies, for India's development of a multi-layered ballistic missile defense shield. And on the ground, India has adopted Israeli models and technologies for things like smart fencing, advanced border monitoring systems, and urban security solutions, particularly along the tense line of control, Al-Asi, with Pakistan and the India-Bangladesh border.
That sounds like a very institutionalized relationship, high-level visits.
Yes, it's been cemented through regular high-level exchanges. Prime Minister Modi's visit to Israel in 2017 was historic, the first ever by an Indian PM. Prime Minister Netanyahu paid a reciprocal visit in 2018. There are institutional mechanisms like the India-Israel Defense Working Group, DWG, and a joint committee on defense cooperation that guide the ongoing engagement.
Was there a specific event that really cemented Israel as a reliable partner in India's eyes?
Many point to the 1999 Kargil War between India and Pakistan as a major catalyst. During that conflict, Israel provided vital military equipment like laser-guided bombs for the Indian Air Force, UAVs for reconnaissance, and other surveillance systems on very short notice when India faced restrictions from some other suppliers.
So they proved reliable in a crisis.
Exactly. It established Israel's reputation in New Delhi as a dependable, all-weather defense partner and highlighted its technological edge, especially in niche areas critical for mountain warfare.
Stepping back, what's the broader geopolitical significance of this India-Israel partnership, particularly in the context of balancing Turkey?
Geopolitically, this deep partnership reflects a significant shift in India's foreign policy over the past few decades, moving away from its traditional non-aligned idealism towards a more pragmatic, interest-driven approach.
But doesn't it complicate India's ties with Arab nations?
That's the balancing act. India has, quite skillfully actually, managed to deepen its strategic ties with Israel without completely alienating key Arab partners in the Gulf and elsewhere, upon whom it relies for energy and where a large Indian diaspora lives. This enhances India's overall diplomatic flexibility.
And how does it help versus Turkey or Pakistan?
It significantly bolsters India's strategic posture, not just in South Asia, but also in the wider Indo-Pacific and the Middle East. Israel often supports India in international forums on issues like counterterrorism and has been critical of Pakistan's role in supporting certain militant groups. It provides India with a strong, technologically advanced partner that shares some similar regional security concerns.
But it can't be all smooth sailing. What are the constraints or challenges in this India-Israel cooperation?
No, despite its robustness, challenges definitely remain. First, as you hinted, there's the delicate diplomatic balancing act. India must maintain crucial ties with the Arab world and Iran, primarily for energy security and the welfare of its large diaspora. Many of these countries are critical of Israel.
How does that play out?
It often means India refrains from certain actions, like conducting very high-profile joint military drills with Israel, or consistently voting in Israel's favor in UN forums on Palestinian issues. It walks a fine line.
What other constraints?
Second, transparency issues in past defense deals have sometimes led to controversies or scandals in India. The Barak missile deal in 2006 was one example. Such incidents can damage trust and disrupt future cooperation. Third, there's the issue of technological dependence versus indigenization.
Israel doesn't share everything.
Israel is understandably cautious about sharing its most cutting-edge, crown jewel technologies, particularly those co-developed with or funded by the United States. This can sometimes hinder India's ambitions for complete self-reliance under its Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliant India policy. Fourth, the relationship is heavily skewed towards defense.
Meaning?
Economic and institutional collaboration outside the defense and security sphere remains relatively modest. Bilateral trade, excluding defense deals, has been somewhat stagnant, and they still haven't finalized a free trade agreement, FTA, despite negotiations going on since 2005. This makes the overall relationship perhaps overly dependent on security ties. Fifth, domestic politics in India can play a role.
How so?
Deepening ties with Israel can sometimes be politicized within India, with critics questioning the shift away from traditional non-alignment or raising concerns about the implications for India's Muslim minority or its relations with the Arab world. Finally, there's the strategic autonomy dilemma.
India's desire not to be locked into alliances.
Right. India's long-standing doctrine of non-alignment and strategic autonomy can sometimes clash with Israel's very close alliance with the United States. This is especially true given India's own significant relationships with countries like Russia and Iran. Furthermore, U.S. export control laws and regulations can sometimes restrict technology sharing in joint ventures that involve U.S. origin technology licensed to Israeli companies.
Okay, so Israel is a major piece of the counterbalancing strategy. You also mentioned Armenia briefly.
Yes, while less prominent than the Israel relationship, India is also reported to be establishing stronger ties with Armenia. Armenia has its own historical and ongoing tensions with Turkey, particularly related to the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict and historical grievances. Strengthening ties with Armenia offers India another vector to implicitly pressure or signal displeasure towards Ankara.
So these alliances, Greece, Cyprus, Israel, Armenia, are crucial for India's strategy. But how do they specifically tie into the broader, often very tense regional dynamics playing out, especially in the Eastern Mediterranean? That seems like a key arena for Turkey's naval expansion.
You're absolutely right. These new or strengthened alliances are part of a larger web of counterbalancing efforts that extend directly into the Eastern Mediterranean, which is a primary focus of Turkish naval expansion under the Mavi Vatan Doctrine, and consequently an area India is watching very closely, partly due to its own growing energy and trade interests passing through the region.
Let's start with the most obvious rivalry there, Turkey versus Greece.
Okay, despite both being NATO members for decades, Turkey and Greece continue to navigate this incredibly complex and often hostile relationship. It's marked by persistent security concerns, sharply conflicting claims over maritime zones, think exclusive economic zones and continental shelves.
Like those boundaries shown on the Seville map that Greece often references.
Exactly. Maps like the Seville map, which reflects Greece's interpretation of maritime law and is generally supported by the EU, are vehemently rejected by Turkey, which proposes its own boundaries. This, combined with frequent escalatory rhetoric from both sides, fuels constant tension.
And this leads to an arms race.
It certainly contributes to one. As Turkey invests heavily in its navy, building those advanced warships we discussed, Greece feels compelled to respond. It's actively seeking assistance from its Western allies, particularly France and the U.S., for its own naval acquisitions to try and maintain some sort of balance of power in the Aegean and Eastern Med. Greece's Mutual Defense Cooperation Agreements, MDCA, with France and the US are key here, but they also feed into that intensifying mixed motive security dilemma we talked about.
And the Cyprus conflict is still a major flashpoint involving Turkey.
Absolutely central. Turkey considers Northern Cyprus, the self-declared Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, which only Ankara recognizes, as its most important strategic pearl in the Mediterranean. It maintains a large military presence there, over 30,000 troops.
What's Turkey's justification?
Turkey claims it's defending the rights of Turkish Cypriots, particularly concerning offshore natural gas reserves discovered in the waters around the island. Ankara argues that Turkish Cypriots have been unfairly excluded from exploration efforts managed by the internationally recognized Republic of Cyprus government in the south.
And this has led to confrontations.
Yes. In 2018, the Turkish Navy physically blockaded an Italian drilling ship that was operating under license from the Republic of Cyprus in Cypriot-claimed waters. Then, in May 2019, Turkey went further and formally announced it would begin its own drilling for natural gas in waters off South Cyprus, prompting strong warnings from Cyprus's regional partners like Egypt and Israel, as well as the US and the EU.
So energy is a big driver of the tension.
Huge. The discovery of significant gas reserves off Cyprus, like the Glaucus-1 field found by ExxonMobil, has naturally strengthened Cyprus's energy partnerships with neighbors like Egypt and Israel. They've formed a kind of energy bloc solidified through forums like the East Mediterranean Gas Forum, EMGF.
Aiming to bypass Turkey.
Essentially, yes. A key goal of this bloc is to find ways to market Eastern Mediterranean gas to Europe, potentially via pipelines or LNG facilities that do not require Turkish involvement or transit through Turkey, thereby marginalizing Ankara in the region's energy geopolitics.
Okay, that covers the Eastern Med dynamics. What about the competition playing out further south in the Red Sea and the Horn of Africa? We touched on UAE's role earlier.
Right. The competition there is also fierce and involves many of the same players, plus others. The UAE, as we noted, has been a major actor funding strategic port projects in Somaliland, the port of Berbera, and Puntland, port of Bosaso. They've also provided significant military support and training to various forces across the region.
Like who?
The UAE notably armed the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, in Sudan during the ongoing civil war there, and supported the Ethiopian federal government during its conflict with the Tigray region. They play a complex game of backing different horses.
And that Ethiopia-Somaliland deal you mentioned, the one for sea access.
Yes, that memorandum of understanding signed in January 2024, exchanging potential Ethiopian recognition of Somaliland for long-term sea access and the lease of land for a military base near Berbera, really complicated the regional balance. It angered Somalia's central government, which sees Somaliland as part of its territory. And, as mentioned, this move was reportedly followed by the UAE reducing some of its support for the Somali National Army in Mogadishu, perhaps partly due to Mogadishu's strong reaction and its simultaneous deepening of ties with Turkey, the UAE's rival.
What about the Sukin port in Sudan? Didn't Turkey have plans there?
They did. That was another significant move. In 2017, under former Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir, Turkey acquired a 99-year lease to rebuild and manage Sudan's historic Suakin Island port on the Red Sea. The intention was clearly for dual use, civilian trade and military basing.
Aimed at challenging whom?
It was widely seen as a move to challenge the perceived Egypt-Saudi Arabia-UAE dominance in the Red Sea corridor. Egypt in particular was concerned, fearing Turkey might use a Red Sea presence to support Sudan's claims to the disputed Halib Triangle border region. Egypt even responded by sending troops to a UAE-established base in nearby Eritrea.
But did Turkey's Suakin plans materialize?
They hit a major roadblock. After President al-Bashir was ousted in 2019, the new Transitional Military Council, TMC, in Sudan, which received significant financial backing, $3 billion pledged from Saudi Arabia and the UAE, took a different line. The TMC declared Suakin an inseparable part of Sudan and asserted that no foreign military presence would be accepted there. This effectively cast serious doubt on, if not completely scuttled, Turkey's plans for military use of the port.
So setbacks happen too. Finally, what about the Turkey-Qatar alliance? How does that fit into this picture of rival blocs?
The Turkey-Qatar alliance is a crucial element. It's often described, perhaps crudely but revealingly, as Turkish boots, Qatari bank. Turkey provides the military muscle, training, and forward presence, like its base in Qatar itself, while Qatar provides substantial financial support to Turkey.
Examples of that support.
During Turkey's recent economic downturns and currency crises, Qatar stepped in with significant investments, reportedly around $15 billion, and crucial currency swap arrangements, like a $3 billion deal, to help stabilize the Turkish lira. It's a deep, mutually beneficial strategic partnership.
And then this alliance forms its own bloc.
Yes, this Turkey-Qatar axis forms a distinct power bloc that often finds itself directly challenging the rival alliance led by Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. This rivalry has created what some analysts call an incendiary fault line that now stretches across the entire Eastern Mediterranean Red Sea maritime corridor.
Making the whole region more volatile.
Exactly. This intricate web of rival alliances and overlapping interests means that conflicts that might have previously remained localized now have the potential to ignite wider regional clashes, drawing in multiple actors with competing agendas. The stakes are very high.
So wrapping things up, we've certainly seen how Turkey's ambitious New Asia strategy, powered by its rapidly evolving defense industry, is creating a really significant military and industrial footprint right across the Indian Ocean.
It's a deliberate and expanding presence.
And this expansion, particularly visible in the Horn of Africa and South Asia with those bases, deals, and arms sales, isn't just a strategic repositioning for Turkey itself. It's being perceived, certainly by India, as a direct challenge to its traditional sphere of influence.
Absolutely. What emerges from all this is a fascinating and perhaps concerning picture of a new kind of geopolitical rivalry unfolding. It's not quite Cold War redux, but it's a complex game of chess.
Played with what pieces?
Played with naval vessels, certainly, advanced drones, but also strategic alliances forged with rivals' rivals, economic leverage, energy politics, and even, as we saw, social media campaigns and boycotts. It's multi-layered competition.
And both Turkey and India seem quite adept at this game.
They do. Both Turkey and India are significant rising powers, and both seem increasingly adept at navigating this messy, multipolar world. They're constantly recalibrating their foreign policies, seeking new partnerships, and leveraging their strengths, whether it's Turkey's defense tech or India's market size, and establish relationships to maximize their interests and project their power regionally and beyond.
And it's crucial to remember this isn't just about abstract geopolitical maneuvers on a map, is it?
Not at all. It's about the very real impact these strategies and rivalries have on regional stability, on the security of vital global trade routes that pass through the Indian Ocean, and on the intricate web of international relations that affects us all.
It definitely feels like the warm waters of the Indian Ocean are, well, certainly heating up with these new dynamics, a space to watch very closely.